Waterfall slows down, breeze, the sun leaves. Cumulus clouds overshadow the area. A cave had appeared with a glowing interior. Inferior primates appeared at the seashore. Search for the knowledge in a natural resource. Mind files power in the force of a narrow path leads to sacred travelers that expanded to a huge community. Trees cloud down, make room for you and me. Machinery we use spread more pollution. Scientific breakthroughs form illusions. Positive intentions make the negative easy. Sleazy, spectacular species. Reach keys in life, mixing your own formula. Curing the conscious, develop the medicine. Practical principles expose better things. It's the God.
Peace and blessings. It is my honor today to introduce our Chief Jegna, Yuya Assaan-ANU. Chief Yuya is very known throughout the globe. First of all, he is my teacher and my mentor. Yes, he is. Chief Yuya is also the administrator of Sadula House Spiritual Center. And also, Chief Yuya has several different websites, anunation.org, Sadula House, OrishaReligion.com, and also he prepares us for our spiritual shift. His shows delve into the dark aspects of life-altering wisdom, and that show is entitled Enlightenment and Transformation, and that show is broadcast every Friday at 6:30 on Blogtalk Radio. And also, the illumination of soul enlightenment through occult studies and holistic health information. I'm so proud to introduce you to our Chief Jegna, my mentor, my teacher.
Already come forth.
Ladies and gentlemen,
information that has already come forth. We're starting to learn now that we are actually global citizens, that we did exist here prior to Columbus, and that we were teaching and establishing traditions and doctrine for literally billions of years. Okay, so I think in the next 50 years and onward, what we'll be slowly and purposely discovering is that more than just diasporic transplants and hybrid Africans we are here in the diaspora. We are actually those who've even returned to this land or who've been here the whole time, and we'll start bridging the gap more. We'll start bridging the connections between various traditions, as opposed to even looking at the traditions that are native to this land, North America, or even in the Caribbean. We'll start understanding much better that these are not traditions that we learned from people in an original place. These are traditions that we're learning from our former students. So when you have the Lakota tribe and the Lenape and they wear the feather, we'll understand better that this is the feather of Ma'at. So these were our students. When they build their medicine wheels and they place their stone in the east, because that's where their teachers come from, we'll understand that we are those teachers. So I would say traditional African spirituality in the diaspora 50 years forward will begin to look more like a reclaiming of global African spirituality.
Now, is the larger African or indigenous spiritual community ready to fully embrace a Pan-African spiritual focus to solve our historical problems and issues within our communities in the diaspora and on the continent?
Could I hear the first part of that question again, please, Believe?
Okay, is the larger African or the indigenous spiritual community ready to fully embrace a Pan-African spiritual focus to solve our historical problems?
Absolutely not. Our historical problems are based on what some would like to call tribalism, But, keep in mind that the word tribal comes from tribulation. So it wasn't necessarily tribe against tribe, but more so a difference of idea began to set in over time. And this occurred before we came here. It wasn't a divide and conquer that the invaders did on the motherland. It was we were already divided, so they conquered. And they precipitated and fueled and amplified the disagreements and the divisions that we already had. So unfortunately, as we move forward, even for many of us reclaiming some of these ancient traditions, there's still a large degree of separation. There's still a large degree of, and it has a name to it. And we have to make a decision first if our work involves redeeming that product, reclaiming that product, or allowing it just to waste away. So I think that's number one. We have to identify who is a part of that nation. And more importantly, there needs to be a unification of certain base ideas. A unification of certain base ideas. For instance, if you go to certain parts of the West, or if you go to certain parts of even, let's say, Europe, regardless of what country you go in, there's still the same cultural imperative. There's still the same social imperative to avoid genetic annihilation. So whether you're dealing with a Frenchman, or you're dealing with a German woman, or someone who is from Spain or Russia or wherever, the actions and the imperative remains the same, regardless of religious stance, regardless of language, regardless of dietary restrictions, so forth and so on. And there are certain core principles that we need to begin to see if we can anchor ourselves on. And if folks cannot anchor themselves on those core imperatives, very similar to the so-called Jews, how they always claim never again in reference to their Holocaust. Well, we have to, maybe that could be one principle, never again. Never again will we position ourselves where we can possibly be led into a place where we no longer have our liberties. And if we can have that as a guiding principle, it will start to form a better think tank and a better action agenda based on one or two principles. Never again will we be in that situation again. Never again will we allow our enemies to educate our children or train our children. Never again will we mistake our enemies for our friends. So identifying, I think identity of self, but identifying of your present physical, social, and political situation, and that awareness is step one.
Outstanding, Chief. And another question I have is, now being that you have an extensive background in youth development and mentorship, now can you share some of the corrective strategies to bridge the gap between African indigenous spirituality with our youth?
So much.
Okay. Well, the first thing we have
just last week, I had a Babalawo or priest mention it mixed in the myth of Jesus, the Ifa. And I'm saying, will Ifa in the diaspora, will it branch off into segments like your Christian churches, like your Baptist, your Methodist, Holiness? Will it branch off? I'm thinking about the future of it, because these are things. A lot of these things they are adding or put it into syncretized, and I put it that way, with Ifa. And my question is, will that have the tradition, weaken the tradition, or bring it out to something just completely different?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, those things are already occurring. Already here in the diaspora, we do have branches of Ifa and branches of Orisa tradition that are not totally in alignment with our original expression of it. And what we typically find, there are certain groups of people who gravitate to those particular branches. Okay, so there already has been some degree of division, and obviously some degree of what one might even call perversion, or others might call adaptation and evolution of what we know to be Ifa and Orisa tradition. So I think we're already in that place as of now. Now, has it diluted what Ifa is? No, it hasn't diluted what Ifa is, because when they adapt and they pervert things, they create something new anyway. Ifa still stands on its own. Ifa still maintains the power and the liberty that it always has. And in truth, the energies that have been created through Ifa, through the Odu, they are actually strengthened. Because if we were to only express ourselves through the staunch, stoic, and even purist traditional way of Ifa and Orisa tradition, we have a lot less people who are following the tradition. That's just the sad truth of it. So when people are able to include other elements, at least these names are still being said. Okay, so Oshun, Ochosi, or Dada, Oba, even if they express themselves and they are in environments and they are in places that may not properly mirror what their environment is,
the world and to be sustained throughout the continent, throughout the globe. Will there be a governing body to sustain the organization?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are people who are already attempting to do that, and there are some who have established foundations and organizations. You have the World Ifa organization, you go to Ile Ife, and, so there is a central hub, but my personal feeling is that I wouldn't want to see a global Ifa organization, because organizations get infiltrated. So whenever you create something like that, you now have a whole new set of problems that you have to deal with. And the truth is, it's not necessary. This thing is going to spread regardless of identity group. And one of the things that we have to get out of is this mentality of joining. Okay, so someone creates a world organization, I need to join that. So now I'm identified by that world organization, but if I need something as an individual in order to take me to the next step of my evolution and my ascension, and it's against the bylaws of that organization, now I have a conflict. And it may create a hesitation in my actual spiritual work, which is what we do not want. So I think it's, in my opinion, in the same way I run my organization, or my order, which is really what I call it, you come in, you get what you need to get, and then you go. Now, if you want to continue to support and be a part and help those who are coming up behind you, that's fine. But it's certainly not something that can be infiltrated easily, and even if it is, it's not much a person would be able to do. I think it's very important when we speak about the Pan-African struggle and we speak about the Pan-African thought and calculation and philosophy, that we understand that the political systems that currently exist, as well as governmental structures and organizational structures, are also foreign to us. That's why 9 times out of 10 they do not work for us. So when we start establishing things, or when we start getting some money, or we do things, we immediately start saying, okay, we need to rival the oppressive culture. We need to have our own banks. We need to have our own stores. We need to have this, that. And that may not necessarily speak to our physiognomy. That may not necessarily speak to our spiritual makeup, to our biological makeup, as far as what we relate to the most and what works for us the best. A susu would be better than a bank. If we had a giant collective susu. If we had a conference that happened once a year or twice a year globally, we were able to meet someone somewhere, just like the mythical powers that be, when we speak about the Bilderberg conference, with a quote-unquote Illuminati, which they're not
joining us to discuss homosexuality in traditional African religious settings. The Sundays in October are sure to be a special treat. Also, in other happenings, on September 28th, please join us and our Chief Jugna, Yuya Assaan-ANU, at the annual Pagan Pride Festival at Battery Park in New York, New York. He will be speaking around 1 p.m. on the topic of self-actualization using the Orisa energies. This is an opportunity for you to meet some of your fellow Mfundi, for those of you who are registered in the new spiritual training. Please join us. And that has been the ANU Nation announcement. And now, back to our broadcast.
I was just letting the audience know we are 12 minutes to the hour, and we're sitting with Yuya Assaan-ANU, and you're with the ANU Asafo show with brothers Ifawunmi Oshundeli and Wole Ifa, and of course, our sister Omilade, who is our all-around person. That was a great set of announcements, sister.
Thank you. Okay, so, Wole, it looks like you can continue on with your line of questioning.
Okay, sounds good. Yuya, we've gotten a lot of feedback from a number of different groups, people in the Pan-African world dealing with foodways, dealing with art. We have a lot of people interested, and of course, it is the African way that spirituality is merged within the lifestyle of the community. What is the importance of foodways, for instance, in Pan-African spiritual evolution for the average person today?
Mm-hmm. You're speaking about food, what we ingest, our eating patterns.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's actually step one. When you're coming into consciousness or you're trying to reclaim tradition, the first thing you need to do is to monitor, pay attention, and look at what you're ingesting, what you're putting inside of your body. This affects your ashe because it goes right into your blood. This affects your cognitive abilities. And we have to understand that outside of home, the society structure and the social structure that has been established does not mirror our home. Outside of that, we have a lot of things that have been instituted within our eating patterns as well as our social and cultural patterns, number one, that are meant to be followed by education.
I thank you for that. I don't want to take up all the time. We want to try to get some other questions in, but we're coming up on the 12-minute mark left in this segment. I want to ask another quick one, and then we'll see if something is in the queue. Haru, you spoke about dealing with the youth. The youth, and I call them the baggy pants youth. Talking about trying to embrace them and recognizing that they are the reincarnations of the ancestors. So they know, but it seems like we need to reach out to embrace. That brings us into a little sticky wicket where there are a lot of people who feel that in the Ifa and other types of Pan-African spiritual traditions, we don't recruit. They come to us. We shouldn't go to them. That brings us to the notion of traditions, ancient traditions in modern times, modern situations. You've spoken on this quite a bit. Please share with us a bit of what is the importance of tradition, and when should we seek to hold it, and when is it necessary to advance it?
Mm-hmm. Tradition establishes community, okay, just as rituals do. Without tradition and ritual, there is no community. It doesn't even exist. That is the genesis or the burgeoning of bringing forth your own community. Okay, so tradition is vital. It's not only vital for that, but also because there have already been calculations and negotiations made with your physical body in the natural environment by your ancestors, which have explained to the natural environment what your body needs, what your spiritual psychology needs, what your whole anatomy, your bio-spiritual anatomy needs. And by following those traditions, or at least understanding those traditions, you understand nature's response. Okay, so when tradition says we do this at a certain night, or we wear these type of fabrics, we're not going to blend and mix fabrics. It's because maybe our body, our skin responds to it a certain way. Okay, so that goes from your food patterns, that goes from what your entertainment typically has been, your way of generating wealth has been, your marital systems, There are things that work for us and there are things that do not work for us. And many of these things have been calculated for. Now, that doesn't mean that our traditions should not be held to scrutiny. We should always, none of our elders, none of our quote-unquote leaders, if we want to claim any, should ever be held beyond the scrutinizing eye. That's what the Sankofa concept brings to us. It's go back and fetch it. But not just go back and fetch it because it's old. Not just grab it because it's an African given. Not just grab it because it's tradition. Go back like a position. Someone leaving, taking another job, there being a position open. It's yours now. Okay? But the first thing that you need to recognize is that, man's rejection is oftentimes God's protection. Okay? So a lot of times when we're aiming, we're shooting towards something, we have to be clear on, are we being protected from something? Is it blockage or is it actual protection? Okay, so that's something that you might want to do a little meditation on. But now, coming back to the Oya piece, one of the things that you want to begin to work with, and you can use basic things. You can use incense, for instance. And this for this particular piece, I want you to use more visualization. Okay, and let's say if you have incense, you see the way incense swirls sometimes, like if you burn a stick of it, you see it kind of the big gray, smoke. I want you to start picturing winds going through that place, that job that you're working at. So you're going to have the incense, and it's going to be swirling, how incense swirls. What I want you to do is picture, I want you to try to take your mind, and I want you to shape that incense as you see it. So you're going to be commanding, this is called psychotelekinesis. You're going to be commanding the incense, which is wind, with your mind. Mm-hmm. So eventually, I want you to start visualizing the incense going like in a tornado. And you're going to see it's going to start swirling. It's going to start going around. Okay? That's going to be your evidence that Oya has showed up. Okay? Now, as you're doing this, you're just going to be whispering to yourself, Oya G-O. Oya G-O. Oya G-O. Oya G-O. Oya G-O. Okay? You're just going to be whispering that to yourself while you're visualizing this wind coming around this incense and going into like a hurricane, like a tornado. Okay? And then I want you to visualize that going to that place that you work at and mixing things up, mixing everything up so that a position is made for you. Okay? So that everything is set straight so that the position is made for you. It's not just going to be a situation where the job says, you know what, we're going to make you full-time. It's not going to be that. It's going to be a place is made that you can now step into. Okay? So you do this, and I would advise you to do it every single day. You want to study until you get that return of religion out of that. You can't do it every single day, such as a Bible or a Quran. Okay? These are things that was a person's lifestyle. So when he said, okay, pray 5 times a day, do you really need to pray 5 times a day? No. But you're told to pray 5 times a day just to keep you in check because you haven't spiritualized your life enough that you have to constantly be reminded of speaking to that higher person or that higher consciousness by making salat, which of course originally was singing. We hear it now as praying. But salat means to sing, and what you're doing is you're singing into your heart chakra. You're enlivening your heart chakra 5 times a day, Oshun's number, and you're singing into it, which raises up your own vibration. Well, what if you just surrounded yourself with invigorating and exciting music that did the same thing? So I would say my suggestion, would be to spiritualize your life in a very strong way so your culture becomes so powerful, your personal culture within your home, that it resembles a religion.
Ashe, 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 outstanding. There's so much to take in.
So much.
Too much to take in. There's too much to take in.
And I just wanted to, while thanking you for this, let people know that while your book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power, gets so much attention, that's not the only book you've published. In fact, you have solutions for dysfunctional family relationships. subtitled Healing and Avoiding the Aftermath of Cross-Cultural Unions and Suicidal Families. So we appreciate you talking about the family dynamic and how the system works, and we want people to know that you are familiar with what you're talking about. You're not just whistling. So I have a question. Brother Ifawunmi, do you have a question right now? Because I have a burning question.
I'll go right ahead, Brother Wale.
Okay. Haru Yuya, I respect the notion of the power of thinking, positive thinking and negative thinking, to manifest things in one's life. However, as a writer of fiction, sometimes my stories and my characters speak to me, and I write some suspense thrillers, and it's not all good, the things they say. So I was just noticing that there is a lot of negativity, negative thoughts going through my consciousness, and even though I'm putting it in the word, it concerns me because, you know, I try to focus on being positive, recognizing the dualism of up and down, left and right, and dark and light. But is that problematic? Thinking the negative thoughts, even creatively.
No, that's not problematic at all. It's important to understand a couple of things. Number one, thoughts are things, literally. Scientists have confirmed that whenever we have a thought, a cell is created. Okay, so a physical cell that they can take out and look under a microscope. So whenever you have a thought, something physically is created. Now, we know before that there is a physical creation is a spiritual creation. So your thoughts are also spirits who decide in an instant to manifest themselves as a physical body. And then cells can multiply, and they become bigger, and they can become bigger and bigger. But the thing is, your thoughts that are leaning and have an inclination towards your evolution of a higher and stronger frequency than those that are not. Now, this has been shown on spectrographs with people when they study the actual brain waves. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to be afraid because I'm happy
for your visit, and we want to ask you to please come back soon. Brother Ifawunmi, or do you have any closing words?
Yes. Thank you so much, Brother Wale. Yes, Chief Yuya, outstanding job you did today. Thank you for feeding us today. Yeah, that was a meal. That was a Sunday meal. It was better than a bucket of chicken, although I don't eat meat. I really enjoyed the questions, the answers to our questions. You really have given us the clarity. There will be more because you're coming back to the show. We really appreciate you here on the new Asafo.
Glad to be here.
Ashe. And of course, we want to thank the listeners here this week and every week. Meet us here on Sunday. And remember to catch Foundational Fridays on our parent network, Enlightenment and Transformation. With that, and bye from everyone, including Sister Omilade. See you next week.
Adabo.
We thank you for your listening support and urge you to become an active participating member. For all those listening, if you'd like to gain a clearer and fundamental understanding of the Anu Order, be sure to pick up the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. To find out how you can become a student and member of the Anu Spiritual Order, please visit us at seduluhouse.com. That is